All right, we back at this joint in the shade. It's cooler. I was saying, funny. It's not even that hot. It's not as hot as it was a week ago. And I was on this joint for a fraction of the period I was before a week ago when it shut off. However, obviously, or seemingly, I should say, it's enough. And funny enough, after I exclaimed that aloud amidst the conditions here, a minute or two later, a brother walks by and terrorizing with his joint, saying how hot it is. So we got into a conversation about it ain't that hot, and he said, "Oh, it is that hot." So anyway, I noticed like the joint kind of started to get garbling at the point where I was talking about subordination, and so I'll just give the summation of that part. One, I was talking about subordinated politics, meaning the difference between working with the system and working within the system. Working with the wind and working within the wind. Working within the wind, ain't gonna hear too much. Working with the wind, I guess that's semantics, because either way, it can be interpreted either way. But my point is with it, and working with the system, it's a matter of like recognizing like, yo, the system is doing its thing, and it's very implausible to perceive an actuality where there's not some type of symbiotic, interdependent, intercooperative nature. Even a cat locked up in a political prison, when they're eating food provided by the warden, that's a certain amount of inter-ideological cooperation. So it's a matter of determining what is the appropriate balance. We each have our different ways of and point of determining that. So that's like working with the system and divesting as much as possible from the things that are unnecessary, the things that are most harmful, and prioritizing that accordingly. Investing in the things that are most healthy, most prioritized, and additionally, right? And then co-vesting, joining with those who are also investing in the same things and building institutions accordingly. So that's what we emphasize. Now, the thing of working within the system is, I mentioned just a few minutes ago, going to council meetings, working on political elections, campaigns, and policy reform, this, that, and the other. That's working within the system. It's a commitment. It's an involvement. It's an acquiescence to the status quo, and it's a significant investment in that, and working through benefits that are gleaned through the system directly. So again, I'm not knocking that. I don't agree with that, but I'm not knocking that. And the important thing is for cats who have similar inclinations, similar interests, similar investments, but maybe some different priorities or methodologies of doing that. It's a matter of like just recognizing the shared agreement, the shared foundation of solidarity, of shared interests, and additionally, and just emphasize that, and then from that identify where we can. We utilize the term in our combo with the teepee. Like, we're in our teepee. We can each be in different parts of the teepee. We can each have our different segments when it comes to this teepee of righteousness, of this teepee of activist solidarity or whatever. We can actually do everything. If that's what you cats want to do, all right, cool. That's what you do. What we're doing on this side is ethical economic cooperation, direct trade with villages, building cooperatives that facilitate that trade. Utilizing conventional currency when appropriate, and then also emphasizing ethical currency of all ethnicities. So that's what we focus on this side. Now, with that, all these different elements and all the other cats that we're connected with, it's beneficial for us to identify that core center of our shared agenda, of our shared interests, and we can call it the 7th generation roundtable. The center where we all get together from our different parts of the parts of the teepee and be like, okay, this is what we want our shared agenda to be. Like you're not going to be voting. We recognize that. You're not going to be going to city council. You're not going to be worrying about campaign elections and this, that, and the other. Okay, we're not going to solicit you to get on board that, or even to like sanction that. So we already know that. But this is what we do want you to do. And then da 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 da. That's from the other side. And then from our side, we're like, yo, okay, you're not going to do squat in a and overtake a flat building. You're not going to forsake all conventional currency and forsake U.S. Citizenship or whatever else. Okay, we recognize that, but this is what we want you to do. And then so it's a matter of identifying that shared agenda in the middle and that seventh generation roundtable. And recognizing what our priorities are, and that it requires each of us in our different segments to think about that. Like, what are we soliciting for those who kind of agree with us but aren't willing to do the same things as us? What do we ask of them? And what's the type of commitment that we want? What's the type of involvement? The type of cooperation? But long term and immediate and long term, day to day. So that's something. That's one of the takeaways that we have from our convo is identifying just that table, that seventh generation. We have yet to call it, or it has yet to be officially pronounced collectively, aggregately as such, but that's what we're calling it on this side, the seventh generation roundtable. So that was the second joint. Numero tres. This one is unpleasant. But it's relevant. And it's something that's going on at this moment. It's actually not the most widely shouted issue, particularly because it's so entrenched. It's so stigmatized, and so many people are enveloped in the woefulness of it as well. And it is sexual exploitation. All the different forms, from pornography to prostitution and the sex trafficking, even just relationships, or quote unquote really, in the sexual predatory behavior that people do, and even what's referred to as consensual ways. So all of this is sexual exploitation. And like I said, it is rife within society, and I'm guilty of it myself. And so when the cat like myself is calling this up, I'm very susceptible to that criticism of like, oh, you think you're Mr. Perfect? Yeah, well, what about this, that, and the other? And so right, but the thing is, it's so tenacious that even a cat like myself has certain legitimacy in addressing this, just because it needs to be, and not for my sake specifically and exclusively, for the sake of younger brethren particularly, that are increasingly vulnerable to these conditions into this predatory type of societal behavior, normalized societal behavior. When we look at advertisements, clothing, and how pretty much any commercial product is sold through women's sexuality, even men's sexuality, and additionally, and so that's sexual exploitation. So without getting into the whole background of like what recently precipitates my actions accordingly, in terms of like bringing this to people's attention, I just say that I'm doing it at this moment, and particularly because I live in an area where people are hurting in this way. So what I'm sharing at this moment is an articulation of why I am addressing this, and given what I've shared about myself, I've shared a lot about what I've done. I will also emphasize, just for the sake of balance, that it's not all self-deprecating. I stopped doing the things that were very harmful. To be honest, it's very difficult for me to think about anything woeful that I do at the moment, because I've significantly cleaned my behavior, and it's been very challenging to do that, taking years. But what I will share is that in doing this, I become increasingly observant, aware. I see like how much it exists. Like it's when we sober up, we see like, wow. When cats are drunk, cats usually don't know how drunk they are. And it's only when cats sober up and like see if you see yourself ever intoxicated, whatever. I haven't seen myself intoxicated, actually, to be honest. Like a video of myself, I don't remember seeing a video, but I remember hearing stories. I remember like memories, like, yo, I was doing that. I remember like evidence of like close this or vomiting or whatever else. And so, anyways, when we're in it, it's increasingly difficult to see it. When we sober up, we become better observers of it. And so that's what I experienced in sobering up. And I very much resist and I very much like hesitate from that trope of being that vigilant reformed cat of just like, oh, now I'm doing it, so now everybody has to do it. I'm sharing this because people are hurting at this moment. So here's the thing: sexual exploitation. We can recognize, one, it's a thing. It exists. And I mentioned before, we can look at severe cases of this. Sex trafficking. That's nasty business. And it's scary how immediate it is, how normalized it is, how hidden and subtle it is, and how twisted it is in terms of the manipulation, in terms of the enslavement, the pimping, the mental manipulation, and it's nasty stuff. And it's not just for young women. It's not just for dudes. Youngsters, children. All right. So, anyways, it's a thing. And we can also, I think, readily recognize pornography is sexual exploitation. We lose some cats in that kind of jump, but for those who can make that jump, sexual exploitation. And it's important to recognize that, because whilst sexual trafficking is widely recognized as being wrongful and woeful and all, we should never let that happen. People just say, "Oh, I've never seen it, so man, what do I have to do about it?" When it comes to when it comes to pornography, for those that do recognize it being sexual exploitation, there's also the necessity or the appropriateness of recognizing that how pervasive it is. Millions, hundreds of millions of people are viewing it on a yearly basis. Millions of women, of men, children being exploited, enslaved, abused, pimped, and worse in such activity. And it's all around. It's all around. And to be honest, I'm speaking on conjecture's point, because it's been years since I visit such places, but in my experience and doing searches, I just see how much of it is available, and I imagine the situation is similar today as it is just a number of years ago. So now, because of that, it warrants addressing. It warrants like, yo, yeah, actually, we should do something about it. Because the thing is, when it's not addressed, then it becomes there's the tendency of the normalization of it amongst adults, but then particularly amongst youth, because youth say, oh, it's illegal, so how bad can it be? And yeah, I don't go to those bad sites. So it becomes increasingly normalized. It becomes increasingly attached to the regular day-to-day behavior of people, perceptions of people, expectations, fears, anger, guilt, and additionally within people's behavior that affects relationships, and additionally. So that's one of the reasons why it's very important to address that. However, it goes further, because in that normalization, boys abuse girls, young men abuse young women, and it's not necessarily physically abuse. It's usury. It's manipulation for sexual gratification. It's dehumanization of women, particularly as sexual objects, and then when the sexual gratification is attained, tossing away women accordingly, either through dismissiveness or whatever else. But that's part of the deteriorating effect that sexual exploitation has on normal, regular relationships within society. And then the byproduct, the outcome, the result, the consequence of that is women who are hurt, women who are betrayed, men who are hurt, men who are betrayed. And I'm not advocating, that's not advocacy of LGBTQ. It's just a matter of recognizing that women can have the propensity of abusing men in different ways sexually, but it goes in both directions. So the point is, people are abused, people are hurt, people are used, and people are scarred by this. And often, after having that, after experiencing that, people become increasingly enveloped in unhealthy behavior sexually, looking for additional attention, looking for affirmation, and additionally, through the means by which guys are most readily and perhaps the most sought after guys, or whatever, however we classify that. Women want attention from and affirmation and proximity and closeness, a relationship with men who are of stature within a community, who have influence, who are charismatic, this and the other. And in order to get that, many women resort to offering sexual intimacy to get that attention, particularly after being abused and manipulated, and additionally. So that's the further reaching costs of sexual exploitation, of pornography, and of the additional things, not just sex trafficking, but additionally. So anyways, it goes on. Now, it also goes further, because even when people don't engage in that type of behavior, aren't visiting sites, aren't doing different things in terms of manipulating people, and additionally, the further cost is being able to detect when it's going on around us, when it's around us, how to identify that, because in ignoring it, and just chalking it up as it is, then it's becoming enveloped in that intoxication, getting drunk with it, even just off the contact, getting high off the contact smoke, and so it becomes difficult to see who's being abused, and see what's happening, and when that's ignored, that type of abuse goes on to further things of depression, anxiety, and other mental malaise, suicide, and additionally. So, and then people say, "Oh, we never saw this coming." Yeah. All right. So that's part of the further consequences of apathy and avoidance. So, and that's one of the reasons why I address it directly. The other thing also with sexual exploitation, those are just some examples. The other thing is just also like the ancient thing of sexual favors, and how sex is utilized as currency for getting jobs, for getting promotions, and for getting sales, closing deals. And additionally, we like to think, "Oh, that doesn't go on these days, this and the other." Oh, let's not be naive. Let's not be whatever. That's sexual exploitation. Um, and we need healing. So part of the healing is recognizing and addressing, admitting to the problem, the challenge, and dealing with it directly and honestly, and with discipline. So that's what I do. Now, what am I doing? Actually, I'm doing something very simple. I sit on the corner of the village on a regular basis, and at this point, I bring a sign with me, and the sign simply says, "Stop sexual exploitation." And like I said, I do that because I live in an area where people are experiencing malaise, dis-ease caused from directly and indirectly sexual exploitation. Yes, I include LGBTQ as part of that that realm of consequence. It's not a judgment. I'm not making a condemnation. I'm just communicating a concern, an interest of well-being, and I'm not. LGBTQ is just part of a larger societal behavior of promiscuity and sexual predatoriness. So the heterosexual, whatever term is utilized for the heterosexual community, I don't know if there's an acronym for that, but same thing with the heterosexual community. And I'm not judging everybody should be this, that, and the other. It's health. It's health. And particularly amongst youngsters. So anyways, that's the third joint, sexual exploitation. And if cats want to call me out on it, call me out on it, by all means. By any means necessary. Let's talk about it. That's what my point is. Don't do what I say. Don't do what I tell you to do. Because first of all, I ain't telling you to do nothing except be righteous. That's a little bit. That's a little bit, because I just told the young brother right there, righteous, be righteous. And I just said the sign was stop sexual exploitation. So I extremely rarely tell people to do anything, make commands on people. I give suggestions. I provide solicitations. Sometimes I ask questions, but I very rarely make commands. I tell people what to do. So don't do what I tell you to do. Don't take my word for it. Challenge me, by all means. That's part of my purpose. That's part of my the point. Talk. Let's work. Let's chop it up, and prove me otherwise. I've said in previous joints that I'm always right. I'm always right, and the only thing I like better than being right is being corrected. So there's a little bit of a con there. Con. It's very difficult for me, because like myself, to distinguish the pronunciation of Kohen and Koan, particularly because the two are just so proximate with each other. There's probably a word that sounds like Kohen, like close or something like that. But anyways, I'm gonna wrap this up kind of soon. So we dealt with that joint. Now we get into we'll get into the business at this moment. So we talked recently about a promotional video for Asana Ashram and Mélangé Ethos Institute, and we're continuing with that. As part of the process and putting that together, we identify like a format which includes a narration, and I think I mentioned this a week ago. In the narration, we actually have a script now, and the script is actually a post-pandemic rendering of the Martin Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech. I don't know if I mentioned that a week ago. I might have mentioned it. I do know one way or the other, even if I've challenged it remembering specifically. But either way, it's written. it's difficult for me to say that it was written. No, it wasn't written a week ago. I remember specifically. So it is written now. It's actually recorded at this point. It's actually not recorded, but it's shared, and there's actually positive feedback amidst the extremely modest sharing that is done, and there's strong emphasis about getting it published. So we are pursuing that path, and so that's one of the things that we're working on. In addition, just the regular stuff, we also have, I think I might have mentioned that we have three documents, basically like petitions and sign-up cards. But the first one is a Declaration of Independence, which is basically a call for conventional institutions, governments, religions, the streets, high society. And all right, how about yourself, bro? All right, be righteous. All right. To allow space, support, cooperation for us establishing village-to-village trade. And so the basic document is actually a petition to encourage people to sign on to. And for those who have an interest from doing such, then the next document that we share is a cooperative compact. So it's basically a half a sheet description of, actually half a page, description of the construct of our co-op. Membership commitment, which is 1% of the previous month's income, how the co-op works, what the decision-making methodology is, what the requirements are for administration, for being on the administration, having duties. So basically, the co-op is ethics-based, honesty, sobriety, veganism, marital fidelity, and ethical economics. And then from that, it emphasizes the Ubuntu ethos, the specific economic ethics of native, vegan, fair labor, honest finance, environmentally harmonious, and healthy. So those are like the protocols of our economic decisions and cooperation. So that's the basic gist of it. It's basically completing purchases with other villages around the earth for basic staples and food items, beans, rice, and bread, and things like that. And then also membership, like I said, is the commitment is one a month. With the membership benefits is that members are able to purchase co-op products at a very significant discount, because for people who just support it on a partial basis, like here and there, whatever, big markups, because we got to cover the cost of those ethics. But for members, our pricing methodology is to offer it at a similar price level, if other than at cost, then at a price level that is commensurate with discount stores in our vicinity. So that's the advantage, the benefit for membership. It also provides we also provide members with communication, access to select meetings, and participation in the forum, the fora amongst members. So there's that. Then for administration, the requirement for administration is accessible. Anybody can opt in for the administration, but it involves two things. One, it involves adherence to the ethical precepts of honesty, sobriety, veganism, marital fidelity, and ethical economics. So it's a behavioral commitment. Membership doesn't require that. And then also a 10% commitment of previous month's income. So that's significant. And that's it. That's what the requirements are. Decisions are made through consensus. Oh, and that's doing it for a period of one full month before being able to sit at the administrative council. So that's it. That's what the requirements are. And that's pretty much what we share, because The other decisions, particularly at this moment, the other information, it's for administration, and so we're willing to chop it up and have convo about it. But we also based on experience, we know what the challenges are, and just like sharing everything with people and availing it to people's opinions and suggestions and decision scrutiny, because without making a commitment beforehand, because if cats are that interested and committed, it's 1% for membership. It's the yes% to sit at the administrative circle. So there it is. All right, that's the compact. Then the third document is the Pluralism Proclamation. So basically, that's a call on, again, institutions of authority, religions, governments, universities, and additionally to enact specific steps, specific support, specific investment to brethren of earth who are involved in one of the 4 stages of pluralism. Those 4 stages being multiculturalism, mixed heritage, world citizenship, and wealth ethos. We identify multiculturalism as interest in people of different lands. We identify mixed heritage as ancestry from people of different lands. We identify world citizenship as commitment to people of different lands. And we identify wealth ethos as discipline with people of different lands. So we call upon our institutions of human society, of the Earth Society, to support brethren in each of these stages and initiatives within each of these stages. And so those are the 3 documents that we have at the moment, in addition to the I have a dean speech. That's we have a dean speech. So that's what the business joints that we got at this moment. And we're going to leave it at that. Now, additionally, jokes. Got a long joke and a short joke. I don't think I've shared this joke on this forum. I shared it before recently on a number of different combos, but I think this is the first occasion of me sharing this here. So here it is. In this first joke, to be honest, I might have said this here before. So, but then it's like, who's seen it? And if somebody's seen the previous joint, then probably ain't too bothered about seeing this one as well. And if I shared this joke, then I'll probably share the next one as well. But either way, here it is. There is a flock of wild sheep, wild lambs in the fields. And amidst this flock of wild sheep, there is a young lamb. And she's pretty spectacular. She's bright, she's intelligent, she's even a wee bit pretty, got charisma, and got a sense of purpose. And so the elder lambs notice her and say, "Oh, that lamb right there, that young lamb, she's got something going for her. We're gonna keep an eye out for her." And they tell her about that. So she grows up with an idea about herself and about what she can do in this life. So she starts to, through the years of her young girlhood, she has ideas, and as she's reaching adolescence, she's having ideas about what she wants to do in life, and additionally, she's got grandiose ideas about who she wants to be and what she wants to do. Even maybe being a multi-millionaire, a billionaire, and running things, particularly for the benefit of her flock. So anyways, that's the scene. Now one day, as the flock of wild sheep are in the meadow, chomping on some choice grass, a herd of deer arrive from the edge of the woods. And amidst the herd of deer, there is the queen deer. Now, the young lamb has heard many stories about the queen deer. How the queen deer is running things in the woods, and how the queen deer has to navigate amidst all the other male deer. I did that. I put the bottle on top of the thing, and now it just blew with the wind and broke. So dilemma of what to do. And I put it on top because recycling. And I actually had it there because it was on the steps. And I removed it. Anyways, that's the guilt, the venting of why I might not be cleaning it up, because, well, actually I can clean up the big shards because I don't want people to walk on it. Alright, anyways. The travails of the traverse. So she heard stories about the queen deer running things in the forest, in the woods, and through all the competition, all the male deer additionally. So the young lamb sees this as an opportunity to talk with the queen deer, to get some advice, some tutelage, and so she waits for a moment to approach, and eventually that a moment arrives. The queen deer kind of goes off to her own for a little bit, and it's quiet. She's chomping on the choice grass as well. So the young lamb approaches, and she says she approaches the queen deer, and she says, "Oh, queen deer, I heard so many fantastic stories about you, how you're running things in the woods and how you established your queendom amidst all the male deer and everything else like that. And I want to be just like you, because I want to do things for my flock, and I want to be a multi-millionaire, maybe even a billionaire, and run things like you run things. What do you advise? What suggestions? What recommendations do you provide? What should I do to be like you? Run things." And the queen deer slowly finishes chewing on her grass, and she kind of finishes, and with a sigh she says, smiling, $1 million just ain't what are you supposed to be. $1 million just ain't what are you supposed to be. Da-dum-da. So that's the joke. That's the humor. That's not a scratch. It's exterior. It was a reflex though. Here's the other joke. It's actually very brief. It's a book title, and it is The Clothing's New Emperor. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom. Yeah. Zaijian. Adios, te chakuis, esepina asamugo, kilo Fred. Love, peace, happiness, and liberation.